You ever wake up on a Saturday thinking, today's gonna be normal, maybe mow the yard, maybe catch the game later, and then, out of nowhere, you find yourself in the middle of a suburban legal showdown? That feels like an episode of some ridiculous reality show nobody asked for? Yeah, that was me, staring at a dirt bike I'd never seen before, brand new, roaring red, just dumped right on my grass. Mud splattered across my landscaping like a big fat signature saying, I don't care. And the second I saw the logo on the side, I just sighed, because who else would it belong to but Karen's kid? You know the type, fancy helmet, no respect, probably never pulled a weed in his life. And here he is treating my front yard like it's some off-road playground. Now, let me back up a sec. This wasn't the first time Karen had tried to throw her weight around, but usually it was petty stuff, like measuring my mailbox height or snapping pictures of my Halloween decorations for rule violations. But this was next level, and before I even had a chance to walk outside, there she was, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched just so, marching across the street with the kind of confidence only someone who's never actually been told no can muster. She didn't bother with small talk, just launched straight into her speech, telling me her son had community permission to use my yard. And that, get this, I was violating HOA's spirit by confronting him. You ever hear something so absurd you forget how to blink? That was me, just standing there, fighting the urge to laugh out loud. But you can't let folks like that see you sweat, so I did what every mildly paranoid homeowner in an HOA learns to do. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Got the dirt bike, the tire marks, the torn-up grass, Karen's finger waving like she was conducting a symphony, all of it. I made sure to narrate the whole scene for good measure, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when people start talking about community permission, what they really mean is, I want to do whatever I want and hope you're too polite to stop me. Meanwhile, my neighbors started poking their heads out, phones in hand, some of them pretending to check the mail, others not even bothering to hide their curiosity, because nothing gets people talking like a showdown with Karen. She kept doubling down, threatening to fine me for disrespect, accusing me of harassment, and waving her clipboard like it was some kind of magical legal shield. But I stayed calm. Explained for the third time that neither she nor her son had any right to step onto my property, let alone rip it up. I told her, politely but firmly, that if she called the cops on me for harassing her son, she'd be the one facing charges for trespassing and filing a false report. That's when the tone shifted. Her voice got just a little tighter, her eyes darted toward the gathering crowd, realizing maybe, just maybe, she'd finally overplayed her hand. And that's when I started digging out the big guns, deeds, property lines, HOA bylaws that I'd saved for exactly this kind of situation, showing clear as day that my lawn wasn't up for grabs. She tried to argue technicalities, but I had it all on paper, and you could feel the air shifting, neighbors murmuring, cameras still rolling, the whole thing turning into a live-action courtroom. Within minutes, I called the cops myself, not because I wanted drama, but because you have to draw a line somewhere, right? I laid out the whole timeline for the dispatcher, and by the time the officers rolled up, Karen's kid was suddenly nowhere to be seen. Amazing how fast a teenager can disappear when things get real. The police listened, checked my documentation, glanced at the mess, and then, this is the best part, told Karen, flat out, that she and her son had no right to be on my land, period. Her arguments about community spirit and neighborhood traditions didn't hold up for a second. She tried to bluster, of course, but you could see the wind going out of her sails as the officers explained that trespassing was trespassing, no matter how many clipboards you own. I kept my phone rolling, making sure every word was captured, because these things have a way of twisting around if you don't keep your own record straight. But here's where the twist comes in. A guy from 2 houses down, who'd never said more than 5 words to me before, steps forward and offers up his own footage. Turns out, he'd caught Karen and her son laughing as they rolled the bike right across my driveway, making jokes about teaching me a lesson. That video, combined with my own, basically sealed the deal. Karen's face went pale, like she realized, for the first time, that maybe the rules actually applied to her. The fallout was fast. Once the police filed their report and I sent all the footage and witness statements to the HOA board, it was over for her. Not only did she lose any say in enforcement, but she also got an official reprimand, plus a permanent note in the HOA files that she and her family weren't to set foot on my property again, unless they wanted to explain themselves to a judge. Suddenly, folks who used to whisper about Karen at the mailbox were sending me texts, thanking me for standing up, and even a few board members admitted, off the record, that they'd been fed up with her antics for years. But the best part? My lawn got fixed. My boundaries got respected, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like the little guy had actually won. Karen's reputation, though? Well, let's just say that when you're used to being the neighborhood bully, it's a long way down when nobody's scared of you anymore. Now, I know some folks out there will say I went too far, or that I should have just let it slide to keep the peace. But let me ask you, where do you draw the line when someone keeps pushing? Would you let your own yard get trashed just to avoid a fight? Or is there a point where standing your ground isn't just about property, but about basic respect? So let's hear it. Where do you stand when it comes to property rights, HOA authority, and neighbors who think the rules don't apply to them? Drop your stories in the comments, argue it out, because trust me, you never really know your neighbors until the dirt bikes hit the grass. Thing is, you'd think after all that, cops on the lawn, HOA documents flying, Karen finally tasting what accountability actually means, that things would settle down, right? Maybe in a normal neighborhood, but ours? That was just round one. Because folks like Karen, they don't just slink away quietly, not when there's still a scrap of ego to defend. About a week later, I caught wind she was holding some sort of backyard support group. For her closest allies, same 3 people who always complained about leaf blowers at 8 a.m. And the next morning, a little flyer showed up in my mailbox, no stamp, just anonymous. It accused me of destroying neighborhood unity and being, get this, anti-youth outdoor recreation. You can't make this stuff up. I laughed, honestly, but there was a new tension on the street, a cold shoulder kind of vibe, whispers near the mailbox, a couple side eyes from folks I'd waved to for years. I knew Karen was behind it, trying to turn my simple defense of my own yard into some kind of culture war. Suddenly, every time I watered the grass or took the trash out, I felt like I was on display, like I was the villain in some HOA morality play. But you know what? I wasn't about to let that pressure work. I went on with my life, barbecued out front, invited neighbors who actually wanted to talk, even made a few new friends out of folks who'd always kept to themselves. That's when the real curveball hit. One afternoon, as I'm fixing the mailbox Karen's flyer had jammed up, a beat-up old pickup rolls up and stops in front of my house. Out steps this grizzled older guy, name's Hank. Flannel shirt, handshake like a vice, and he just grins and says, "Heard you gave the clipboard queen a run for her money." Turns out, Hank had lived in the neighborhood since before the HOA was even formed, knew every property line by heart, and carried enough stories about Karen's shenanigans to fill a soap opera. He offered to help reseed the grass, showed me a few tricks for dealing with compacted soil, and, best part, he had copies of old community maps showing exactly where the HOA's authority actually stopped. Suddenly, I realized I wasn't alone. Hank's stories got around. Too soon. A few neighbors started sharing their own run-ins with Karen, from fines for excessive holiday lights to accusations about dogs barking too loud at 2 p.m. It was like the neighborhood's secret history was bubbling up, and once people started talking, it turned out nearly everyone had been on the receiving end of her clipboard at some point. The difference was, until now, nobody had dared push back hard enough to make it stick. One night, a couple of us were grilling burgers, swapping stories, when a sheriff's cruiser rolled through, just a slow drive-by. But it was clear they were keeping an eye on things. A neighbor joked that we should start our own HOA Survivors Club, and before I knew it, we actually did. A little group chat, folks sharing advice, pooling old paperwork, and making sure nobody got railroaded by bogus rule threats. The mood on the street started to shift, less fear, more jokes, more folks willing to stand up and say, "That's not right." Even people who'd been Karen's biggest supporters started pulling back, realizing she'd overplayed her hand, and the neighborhood was tired of living under a microscope. And here's the kicker. At the next HOA meeting, Karen showed up late, tried to regain her authority, but nobody took the bait. Board members ignored her interruptions, neighbors pushed back against her motions, And when she started rattling off more infractions, someone quietly slid a copy of the police report her way. For the first time, she was speechless. It was honestly a little sad and a little satisfying. In the end, she resigned from her enforcement post, claimed she needed more family time, but we all knew she just didn't want to face a room full of people who'd finally had enough. So yeah, maybe my grass still has a few scars, but the neighborhood feels different now. Looser, friendlier, almost like we all remembered how to mind our own business and look out for each other at the same time. It's funny, the way one dirt bike and a power-hungry clipboard could spark a little quiet revolution. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. But now I'm curious, where's that line for you? How much would you tolerate before you push back? Do you think HOAs help keep peace or just give folks like Karen a badge to bully? Drop your stories, your hot takes, whatever's on your mind. Let's see who's really living in a friendly neighborhood out there and who's just surviving it.